Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Gard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So today we talked to Ben Marshall. He is also known as the Cheeky Quilter. He also works at Martelli Enterprises, designing quilts and quilting. So how cool is that? Let's talk to Ben.
I am Ben Marshall, and I'm calling from Pensacola, Florida.
Awesome. There's a lot of quilting going on in Florida. It's kind of amazing how many people I interview from Florida.
Yeah, and they all live about 8 hours away from me because I'm way at the very edge.
You're close to us, aren't you? Pensacola is like closer to New Orleans.
Yeah,
we can get to you.
Yeah, it's about 3 hours to New Orleans from here.
Really? Oh, that's awesome. That's not terrible.
Yeah, so Orlando is about 9 hours, so it's 3 times as long.
Yeah, that's a ways. That's funny. Tell me your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life.
Well, I pretty much grew up around it. All the women in my family sewed and quilted. Most vivid memory is I did some runway work as a child model.
You did?
My mother was big
Lovely.
into heirloom quilting.
Oh, interesting.
Making children's clothing. So my sisters and I did runway shows for whatever company it was that she made samples for. Yeah, so that was always a lot of fun. Cool. And also, of course, quilting. My grandmothers on both sides of the family, all the way back, would always take over the living room and set up the quilt frame, and I would crawl underneath, and they would poke the needle through, and I would poke it back up from the bottom. And
that's really interesting. What time period is this that you're still having a frame?
Late 80s, early 90s.
Don't you think that's amazing, right? Like, people always think of it as like old in time. That's not old in time.
Yeah, well, and I mean, plenty of them on that side, especially on my father's side of the family, they're all from rural Alabama. Some of them still don't machine quilt.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Hand quilting, it's like a thing. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
You are like, it's so interesting. So when did you get into quilting? How did you get into quilting?
I got into quilting actually through machine embroidery. I was attempting to help my parents start an embroidery business.
Yeah? Why were they telling me about their embroidery business?
Pretty much they had gotten the machine and been told, hey, you can run a business if you get this machine. My mom she had always wanted a baby lock, so my dad finally said, okay, I'll buy you a baby lock. And they went and the dealer talked them into the big fancy one with the embroidery and everything. And they were like, oh, and you can run a business. So my mom was like, okay, well, yeah, here, figure this out, run a business. So,
do you feel like that's really interesting? Does it seem like that's part of the sales pitch for these machines, is that they are sort of saying to people like your mom and others, like, there's a business opportunity here? Like, because of the expense of the machines, like, what's that about? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it seems to be. I mean, a lot of the machines, I don't remember the exact cost of my mom's, and I know she bought it used, so they're very practical people, so she wouldn't have paid top dollar for it. But I know a lot of those machines, the single needle embroidery machine that's a flatbed, they start at $20,000 now.
It's totally insane.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I mean, not many people can afford a $20,000 machine.
Yeah, and you can justify it if you're saying, well, I'm going to do a payment plan and I'll use it for a business.
And I'll do it for other people, and then that's...
So did they make the business?
That's what closes the deal for the husband.
Yeah.
Not really. And actually, the more that I started looking into trying to get an embroidery business off the ground, I realized, for one thing, everybody has an embroidery machine now.
Yeah.
They're very accessible, and a lot of people do their own, or they know somebody who will do it for cheaper than I would need to do it to actually just run a business.
It's interesting. I heard from, I think it was on our Facebook group, Just Wanna Quilt Facebook group, that they were saying that so many people are buying long arms that the long armers don't have as much business because their customers are now buying long arms themselves.
Yeah, especially with the hobby level long arms that are available.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the commercial versus the hobby ones.
Right.
We can all be the commercial ones.
We can all be long arm quilters. That's right.
Exactly. But one of the things that I figured out, I took a bunch of classes. The dealer that they bought through offered a lot of education opportunities and stuff. So I took classes. So I was taking a couple classes a week for about a year there, and eventually figured out that the actual money was in designs and selling designs to embroiderers, not selling embroidery.
Right.
So I started digitizing. That worked for a little bit, and one of the things that I was getting a lot of demand for was stuff that could be used in quilts. So I figured, well, I should learn a little more about this quilting stuff, and I fell in love with that all over again.
That's really interesting.
I mean, I grew up around them, so I knew some of the basics of quilting.
Yeah.
I had some idea, and I knew a lot. I mean, obviously, there's a rich history, and I had been around them my whole life. I just didn't know the specifics of making them, so that's what I dove in and started learning, and haven't looked back.
That's so interesting. And so tell me a little bit about your background of why you were thinking about designing, and sort of just tell me a little bit about how you got to even thinking about doing the embroidery stuff.
The long short version of that is I couldn't support myself in it as an educator, so I wound up having to move back home. I pretty much just gave up on higher education.
All right, so let's just pause there because I totally get that part. So now I got to hear about that part. So you did you said that off camera you were teaching English, is that right? Like you were teaching at the college level, you were teaching English?
Yeah, I was teaching at a community college, a couple of community colleges in Texas, and also
So where did you go to college? Where'd you go? Tell me a little bit about that part of your life. So you went to college.
Yeah, so I went to college. I majored in creative writing and minored in women's studies.
Awesome. We're going to talk about that.
And then I went to grad school also at Memphis for I did a Master of Fine Arts in creative writing.
You did a Master's of MA in creative writing?
An MFA.
MFA. Yeah. Cool. Where'd you go for your MFA?
Memphis also.
Oh, interesting. All right. And so then you were teaching at the community college level. And I know a bit about that, which is that we are losing our tenure system in a terrible way. We're hiring adjuncts, we're hiring lecturers, we're overloading our tenure track faculty, even if they do get a position. Mm-hmm. And you just felt like, I'm getting out. Like this is not the profession I signed up for. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I was looking around, and I had friends who had been doing this for 15 years. And still didn't have a full-time position, and it was only getting worse.
Yeah.
And I was just like, as much as I love this job, I don't have it in me to do this for 15 years. And it happened to coincide with the fact that my parents were trying to get that business off the ground. So I just looked back and
it was just a thing.
Yeah, that was the opportunity that kind of presented itself.
So interesting. All right. Okay, cool. So, so how long have you been quilting now? Tell me about your quilting life.
So I say I pretty much started in June of 2017. That was when I kind of gave up on embroidery and transitioned more to quilting and started focusing more on that. And so now I teach, I do some teaching locally. That's pretty much what I would like to do long term.
So how quickly from learning it did you, because you're used to, say, this is a teacher thing, right? We're used to learning something and then teaching it very quickly after we learn it, right?
Yeah, actually, when I was teaching at the community college, the first time I read Hamlet, it was as I was teaching it. We actually read it aloud in class, and I analyzed it as we went and pretended I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of that with, especially baby teachers, beginning teachers, right?
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
So I'm pretty good at turning around and teaching something, and actually, I learn better by teaching someone else, and that's not just
me. True.
That's, general, a lot of people you learn.
I mean, because you have to really absorb it and know it really well to be able to then explain it back out, right?
And also the way that you are absorbing it when you're learning it to teach someone else. If it's something that you are planning to turn around and have to pass on to someone else, the way that you approach that information is very different. And the way that you absorb it is very different than if you're just learning for yourself.
Yeah, I hear that.
And so I teach... I'm not super advanced. I only teach beginner class. I'm kind of an advanced beginner at this point.
Nice.
But, I mean, I've been quilting for, not even 2 years, but also I was doing it for literally 16 hours a day for the first year that I was doing it.
Really?
So,
you just immersed. You just dove in. That's really interesting. I feel that way about this project. We've done, people don't know, we've done, I think about 300 interviews in a year.
Oh, wow.
In a year.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a little too many. It's a little too many.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I put them in the spreadsheet recently. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. So you are kind of like me in some way. You like immersed yourself in a crazy way. Yeah. So the time that you've done, like if you measured a year, you have to do years times hours, because then you exactly. Right. Yeah. Then you really know. Yeah.
Because that's the thing, especially I'm in a few guilds locally, and so I'll have friends who have been quilting for 10, 15 years that are about the same level I am, but it was a hobby that they did 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
A Friday, it was 2 hours on the weekend.
Yeah,
and that was it. And I'm
yeah, you and I just like delved. Exactly. We went deep, fast.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how did you? Let me ask you about that. So how did you? What was your strategy if you were quilting that much? What was your strategy in learning? Did you go, oh, I'm going to go look at X, or was it project based? Was it individual based? Like, were you looking online? How were you learning?
It was, honestly, I opened YouTube and typed in quilting and just let it play. And I would do that for 2-3 hours every night and just see what I would learn.
And just learn. So you were learning, how much percentage of your learning time would you think was YouTube versus sewing time?
I would watch YouTube while I was sewing, so it's kind of hard to...
That's great. Yeah, that makes sense then.
I pretty much...
Were you doing the projects that you were watching, or were you...
I am not a project learner, I'm a technique learner.
Interesting.
And so I immediately apply techniques in my own way. That's how I've always been.
Yeah.
I cook a lot, and I almost never follow a recipe, but I know the techniques that I'm doing, and so I'm applying those different things.
Interesting.
And pretty much the same thing has happened with quilting. I rarely follow patterns, and even if I do, I'm tweaking them.
So you were looking at videos to sort of think about half square triangle or some particular free motion. Now, did you
learning about seam allowance and quilt math,
all that stuff? So who were some of your favorites that you watched?
I watched every episode of Quilty with Mary Fons.
You did?
One of the first things. Yeah. Because it had finished around 2015, so the whole catalog was up there, and it's still up there. It's great information if you're just starting out.
And what did you like about Mary, about Quilty?
She has a similar sort of intellectual approach to quilting that I do. She kind of approaches it as a historian almost, and she is definitely... Quilty itself was more technique-based than project-based. Yeah. Obviously, you can't avoid Jenny Doan if you are looking at YouTube for quilting.
Yeah. So what did you think of her stuff? What did your thoughts about Jenny Doan?
They were interesting. It was one of those things where I would look at it, and again, I would look at the quilt and think, I'm never going to make that. Yeah. Nothing that she makes is really my taste. No disrespect to Jenny. She's great.
No, but it's very traditional, block-based, kind of very,
Yeah, but I would learn the techniques, that's where I learned about strip piecing, and that it's faster to sew 3 strips together and then cut them up than it is to cut
strip piecing,
9 squares and make a 9 patch. Yeah. Just sort of things like that you pick up.
So that makes sense. So you have it on the background.
I can tell at a glance now the way that a quilt was constructed 90% of the time. Yeah. Versus before, when I thought everyone was literally cutting each individual piece and throwing it together. And
so I can see that you're sewing. You've got it in the background, and suddenly it's like, oh, she's doing something. Like you just kind of pick up something that is helpful in terms of what you're doing. Now, did you keep like a log or a journal, or how are you or just absorbing it?
Pretty much absorbing it. I write on the samples that I make when I learn a technique. If I'm going to try it out, I write it on there. I catalog. I have a big.
Can we see? What is that?
It's such a mess in here right now. It's down in the bottom of the closet. But
that's cool. So you would do like a half square. Like, give me an example of a technique and what you would write on the sample. I would experiment with different types of stabilizer because I used a lot of stabilizer for. What'd you find? What'd you like?
Yeah, there was a really cheap brand of tearaway that I ordered from China through Amazon is actually my favorite. Really? One of the first things that I kind of put everything together, developing different techniques. It's not my own technique. Other people have done it, but I do. It's essentially like foundation paper piecing, but I do it in the hoop on the embroidery machine. So all I have to do is just drop the fabric in, and it sews perfectly straight line, and then I flip it and drop the next piece in. So there's a lot of different experiments that I did with that, with different types of stabilizers, and so I have those, and they're all dated and what's what, and the different types of thread. So
that's really cool.
as organized as it sounds, it's actually a terrible mess. But I do still have the record.
So why? So okay, you dive deep. You were thinking about your own techniques. You really took this as seriously, this is my job. I'm going to learn this and understand it. Is it just because you're a maniac on new projects, or did you have I want to become an expert so I can do this as a career kind of thing?
It was a little bit of both, and also just there's a passion that I had for it that I can't necessarily explain.
Can't describe.
This is, it's also. This is my art now. I have a Master of Fine Arts degree. I've always thought of everything that I do, even when I'm writing, my syllabus when I was teaching, that was still a part of me that I was putting out there. My words were a part of me. I always viewed it that way. And the same thing goes for my quilts.
Yeah.
So it's just as much that form of personal expression and putting myself out there in the world.
Yeah, I see that. That makes sense. That's cool. That's really interesting. Okay. So... gender. So you were probably born a biological male. I'm not very good at this. My daughter is non-binary, and I'm going to mess it up completely every single time. Yeah. She's the thing that...
Cisgendered male.
Gendered male. So tell me about the minor in women's studies, and also sort of where do you think the place of men are within the quilting sphere? Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
I just always had that interest, so I don't even remember exactly why I decided to minor in women's studies. I think it was one elective that I needed, so the intro to women's studies fit in that time slot, and it turns out it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, all the women in the class appreciated having me there. So, it was one of the things where actually it was a little bit misogynist in that my opinion seemed to matter more in class discussions and things.
So interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I find the same thing in the quilting world. That's being a male in a female-dominated setting of any kind, it's sort of the opposite of being a female in a male-dominated
it's area. I always think it's I danced pretty seriously as a kid, and it was there would be that one boy, and then he gets front and center, right?
And that's why even in the fashion shows as a child, I was the one boy,
and front and center, right? Everyone was so happy you were there.
They were thrilled that I was there. I would ham it up and skip down the runway or shake my sign or something, and got extra attention.
Interesting. And you feel that way too now when you're teaching quilting, that there's a general bigger acceptance of you because of your...
Yeah, I am taken more seriously. And that also happened, I noticed just when I was teaching, whether it's male-dominated or not, or female-dominated or not, I'm a 6'2" white male. The world is programmed to take me seriously.
Totally. My husband too. It's interesting.
So
whatever you pick up, it's you're legitimate immediately. It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, that was one of those things that when I would be in service with other teachers, they would talk about, well, how do you get your class's attention on the first day of
Not a problem.
How do you gain their respect? And I was like,
you breathe, you walk in.
Exactly. I walk in and I own the room. That just is.
And it's interesting because when you're I've seen this with my husband, who is 6'2" as well. Mm. White male as well.
Yep.
And he, because he's really he does a lot of cultural theory, a lot of he does also gender theory, other things, right? Othered people stuff. They don't really love him. I mean, some people hate him. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Some people hate him. But the fact that he's taking time to listen and be part of a dialogue, that people really love. I mean, it's weird.
Yeah.
Everybody always loved him. I mean, I love him in spite of that, right? He's very, everybody loves Ron. Yeah. So it's interesting. Do you feel that way too? That, people are so happy that you're part of quilting or part of a minority and women, that they're just we love you, Ben.
Exactly,
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that initial, so are you a quilter or are you lost kind of question.
Exactly.
And, pretty much my rule is you get one joke. One comment about, when I walk in and sit down in a class and the instructor turns around and sees me and is like, oh, there's a man. Yep.
Oh, there's a man.
Okay. But I don't want to keep talking about it. It's annoying. It can be annoying to dwell on. I mean,
it is.
One time I was taking a class in Paducah, I think it was, and when we were sewing, doing precisely what the instructor had just told us, a lady walked over and looked over my shoulder and said, "I've never met a man quilter before. I just wanted to see what you were doing." And I was like, the same thing you're doing.
They don't understand that that's not cool,
like
right?
It's not literally the same exact thing.
Right. You kind of want to be like, back off, like respect, you know? Like,
exactly. Well, have you ever heard of the glass escalator effect?
The glass escalator? No, tell me that.
I wish I could attribute this to the person who coined that term. I read it.
Now, let me take a look. I'll look it up.
I read it. It was a study that was done actually on male knitters, but it's just sort of an opposite of the glass ceiling effect, where men who enter female-dominated areas, fields, whatever, sort of take that glass escalator straight to the top.
Right. Yeah,
it's honestly, I'm kind of banking on that.
Men rise higher and faster in women-dominated positions.
Yeah,
they say nursing, teaching, social work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I have definitely found that to be true in the quilting community. It's
so interesting.
I've definitely taken and another question that I almost never get is, how long have you been quilting?
They just assume you're a professional. They just assume
that I know what I'm talking about, because I'm 32, so I'm very young for a quilter in general. You know, the average age is 57, I think, last time I checked.
Yeah.
So even that should be a clue that I'm not as experienced as a lot of the other people who are standing around me, but still, for some reason, I'm immediately taken seriously. So, and it's been nice for me. It kind of sucks for other people, but it's been a positive for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what are your goals with this new obsession, profession thing? I
would like to be able to make a living on my own. Right now, I do work for a quilting company, Martelli. They manufacture their main product is their first product was a cutter, and they make some different templates and tools and tables and different things.
Yeah. And we talked to them at we talked to them at Quilt Market and Quilt Festival. Yeah. And they even sent over. We were doing this crazy project with Sue Blyweiss, and we were grabbing things from all over the place. Like we were using a festival as like our own studio. So we were often, and then suddenly we realized we didn't have something like a ruler or something. I don't remember. So everyone was like, "Let's go there." So there was a bit of a madhouse to our whole approach to all of it. But I think we're supposed to interview them at some point. I think that's on our schedule. But yeah, so you work now professionally in a. And again, that's one of those things. I'm not sure that job would have fallen into my lap the way it did if I wasn't so distinctive. You were distinctive. You were something interesting. That's interesting. So
there are hundreds of quilters in the Pensacola area that would have been just as qualified for this job as I am, honestly. But
it's interesting, isn't it?
I stick out a little more, I guess. It was,
but you're also probably good at what you do. So, I think you kind of like, I feel like a little bit that way with this project. Because, like, what law professor is, like, off to asking quilt? Like, I'm a weird thing, like, in people's lives right now. Like, I've just injected myself into their discourse. And, but that's okay. You know what I mean? I think it's like we all sort of have weird things about us. Even if our weird thing is that we're really normal and average. And, like, everybody, that's in itself interesting. So I don't know. I think it also is something more. Obviously you have more than that, because there are other people that are quilting. You know what I mean? You're not the only man quilting, right? So, there's lots there are actually more than we think out there.
There's a whole Facebook group of us, actually.
Now, yes. Now tell me about that. Are you part of that Facebook group?
I'm not. In general, I don't like to talk about it that much. In this setting, it's fine because it's kind of an academic.
It is academic.
More
it's
intellectual approach.
Yeah.
Versus.
But you're not like going off to man retreats or anything like that.
No, I don't care.
That's not something. That's not what you're about.
Every time I show someone a quilt, they're like, "Oh, it's so masculine."
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of a running joke that people call my quilts masculine.
Really? Do you have a quilt there? Really? Are they masculine? Are you making traditional? Like, what kind of stuff are you? Yeah, you're gonna go take a look.
I do a little bit of everything. I do some modern. I do some traditional. Like the one that I have on the long arm at work right now is Civil War reproductions.
Oh, that's cool.
But even it's in blue and brown, so everyone's decided that it's masculine.
See, that's just assuming the person that's there.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? That's silly.
I think that's them projecting.
Maybe your stuff is masculine, right? I don't know.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't. every once in a while I'll look at one and I'm like, okay, I can see why you would call this one masculine.
Yeah.
But then,
so did you? So you also free motion quilt then? Because you said it was on the frame. Are you doing so? How did you learn to free motion quilt, and what was your sort of strategy for that?
A lot of Angela Walters videos.
Angela Walters, totally rocking. I love her. We have not interviewed her, but I think she's. Although I put my version of it next to her version, like I take, and I was like, no. Yeah, I have more work ahead of me.
So I'm decent at free motion. I do, like I said, that is one of the classes that I teach, but it's just the introduction. It's all I have them do is trace their hand with the water soluble marker, and then so they have to trace that and then fill it in with a simple fill and then echo.
That's great. Yeah.
So it's just.
What do you think is key to like actually getting good? I mean, I feel like I'm improving. I am, and I try to do, and I find like, what if I don't do it every night? My skill slips a bit. But I'm curious what your thoughts are about, like, how do you get good at free motion quilting?
It's all about practice.
I think so too, right?
That's not what anyone wants to hear, but really every 20 minutes that you spend doing it, you're 20 minutes better, and sometimes that 20 minutes is significant, depending on what you find out. But even if you're just fine-tuning, it's one of those things that just, every quilt I do looks a little better than the last.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll get to where I like them all.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of hand quilting as well. I especially like big stitch hand quilting. Just one where I was hand quilting and piecing at the same time. I just threw the batting and I went ahead and sandwiched it and then pieced it with big stitches.
That's really cool.
I went, so that was fun. I like to play with a lot of different techniques. So my work is really varied. My boss definitely calls me a modern quilter. She, as much as she loves me and is glad that I work there, she hates 90% of what I make. She
what? It dropped out. I couldn't hear what you said.
I said, as much as she loves me and is happy to have me working there, she hates about 90% of what I make.
Interesting.
But she understands that other people like it. So.
Yeah, well, we all have different tastes of things. That's interesting.
She's very traditional, like very different colors than I do. I do a lot of blue. I will say that. I think I've made 5 blue and white quilts at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? Are you just, I know we're not going to talk much about your work, but just to understand, so we have a context, are you trying things out? Are you making samples? Like, what is it that we kind of understand sort of the context of what you're doing when you're, like, the fact that she's not that thrilled with it, like it's not her taste, means that is she assigning it to you? Do you get to do whatever you want? That kind of thing. She gives
me a lot of creative freedom. The only thing is that I have to use their products.
Got it.
No one in the Martelli family is actually a quilter.
Interesting.
Strangely, even though they've been in this industry for 20 years, for whatever reason, none of them actually have.
Well, they got a lot going on,
Yeah. So I'm pretty much the resident quilter. So I explained to them, how we could improve the tools.
Oh, that's really cool. So you get to sort of.
When it comes to the designing, I design quilts that are made using the tools. So I'm there to. I'm mainly education, so I'm showing people how to use their tools, how to make the quilts, how the things that they make can be.
I love it. That's a great job.
It is. I love it.
That's really great. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's very cool. How interesting. Fabulous. And then you're still doing now, are you teaching outside of that as well, outside of your job, or is that mostly the teaching happening within your job?
I've only been there about 6 months, so I have only now gotten to the point where I think I can actually handle all of that.
Yeah.
But there's a local quilt shop here that I was teaching at before.
Got it. Now, do you have a website? You don't have a website, do you? Do you?
I own the domain, but there's nothing on it yet.
Ah, that's right.
So right now I just have Instagram. I'm the Cheeky Quilter on Instagram.
I'm sorry, say it again. You're dropping out again. I can't hear you. Sorry.
I'm the Cheeky Quilter.
Yeah. I can't hear
Instagram. Sorry, Cheeky Quilter.
Cheeky?
Cheeky.
Oh, you're Cheeky Quilter at
Cheeky Quilter
on Instagram?
Yeah, and as of now, that's my only online presence.
Got
but
it.
I'm under the process of building a website.
Hold on, let's go there. Cheeky Quilter?
Yes.
Cheeky?
KY. Yes.
Quilter. Oh, no. I messed it up. I spelled it wrong or something. Cheeky. All one word?
It's the Cheeky Quilter.
The Cheeky Quilter.
Yeah, sorry.
Not just a Cheeky Quilter. The Cheeky Quilter.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're like all Englishy, so you were.
Yeah, and everything I do is a little bit subversive and
subversive. Tell me about this. Oh, look at that! Oh, that's really pretty.
Yeah, so I'm poking fun at something in everything I do. If nothing
Tell
else,
me about that.
I'll have like a weird, Lewis Carroll name, like my most
nice.
Jub.
I love your blocks. They're really great.
Oh,
and then you've got the Tula Pink, her witches thing. Are they not witches? What are they?
They are witches. They're Day of the Dead witches. They're cousins to the other witches and whatever that other line was. She did. Yeah. Cool.
And you're making all these different blocks, and there you are with Tula?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, that was a sew-along that I did. She did a book, The 100 Blocks.
Yeah, The 100 Blocks. I know that one. I've done that.
I did a sew-along. I made all of them.
You made all of them?
Blocks. Yes, it was 100 blocks on 100 days. So
and did you do them? Are these the blocks on your...
Yeah.
Oh, these are the 100 blocks.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about that book is that it's it's just pictures. There's no words.
Yeah, it was really easy to follow. Actually.
Yeah, it was great, right?
Easier than having someone try to explain how to do a diagonal seam. It just
no, it was great. I like pictures.
Yeah, it was easier to follow than a lot of that.
And then you've got one at the very bottom that's blue. Are those doilies on it?
Yeah, those were some from my grandmother.
From your grandmother's stash.
I inherited my grandmother's stash, so I used a few of her doilies. She loved blue and white, so that was kind of a tribute.
That's very cool. And so it was whole cloth, and then you put the doilies on top.
Yes.
Oh, that's very cool. I should actually be taking... Hold on just a second. I'm just going to be really mad at myself later because I'm just being too lazy right now. All right, cool. So what did you do with the 100 blocks? Did you put them in a... What did you do? They're all kind of... It's kind of scrappy, right?
Yeah, that was a bag of fabric that I got from my other grandmother, actually. That was left over from a quilt she had made. So they were already kind of coordinated. There was, a lot of this sort of like 30s prints reproduction, scale floral stuff. So it was easier to just, I wasn't having to do a lot of fabric selection. I could just pull from that.
You're just pulling for that. And what did you do with them? Did you put them make them into a quilt once you were done?
There's still a stack right now. I had a lot that I was trying to get done by the end of like November, early December.
No, I get it.
Now finally to the point where I can take them.
I love it. And then there's another one on here. Did you do this one? The one that's the hexy one? No.
I think so. Did I?
Is this... There's one here. I don't know if you're...
I'm looking... Oh, no, the hexagon one. That one was in Houston.
That was in Houston. That's incredibly insane.
That's quarter-inch hexagons.
That's totally insane.
There were 45,000 of them.
Oh, my God. That's too insane.
That was an antique. I think it was from like the 1890s or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... I do like English paper pieces, and I do a lot of half-inch hexagons, and people call me crazy for doing that. So
so that you took a picture of like, hey, I'm not that crazy. Right.
Yeah. So I can't take credit for that.
Very cool. And then the hall from Schoolhouse, you have a picture of that up there. Tell me, like, Schoolhouse is at During Market, and it's a thing. And I have to say, for me, like, I've been to it twice. I get kind of overwhelmed by it because there's like 1,000 people running from different spaces. There's like, I don't know how many, 21 classes going on at once. It's like, should be called Madhouse instead of Schoolhouse.
It was insane.
It's completely insane. But you got a lot, you know how to do it right. So how did you get all that stuff?
Well, that was Sample Spree. So
that was Sample Spree.
Well, it was a combination of Schoolhouse and
Sample Spree. Got it. So Sample Spree is different because that's you purchasing stuff and all that.
Some of that I purchased. Sense. I would say probably a third of that is free, and the rest was like stuff that we had purchased. Schoolhouse. Got it. So tell me about like your strategy for both of them because they were very. They're both so. Schoolhouse is shops going to learn about stuff, and there's often sample packs of stuff and things like that, sort of new fabric lines and stuff like that. That's Schoolhouse. And then Sample Spree is it that same night? It's like then maybe the next day. I don't remember when it is, but it's exhausting. This year, but I think that's the first time they've done it that way.
Yeah.
Normally, Schoolhouse is actually between Market and Festival, but this year they did it before Market.
Yeah. So, and then Sample Spree is you pay for it. It isn't like Sample Spree is like a bazillion, but it's kind of new stuff or other things. It's craziness. It's stuff that's not hitting the market yet. It's pretty much all of the
fabric company, not all of them, but most of the fabric companies will have like their spring lines. So
you can make the samples so that you can have
exactly.
samples free is basically buy this pack because then it will come into your shop and you will already have the...
Exactly. So the Civil War one that I said I was working on at work, that's made with a sample back quarter bundle that we bought at Samples Free, and it actually doesn't come out until January or February.
So when you're there, are you buying for you, or are you buying for work, or sort of what's your strategy for being there?
I was there for work. I have such a strange job and a strange position within the industry because I do a little of everything.
Yeah.
I was there as a buyer and I was there as an exhibitor, but I'm also a writer because I do the blog and I also do my own designing and stuff. So I kind of do a little of everything.
Yeah.
Because the Martelli has a small quilt shop at the front of the factory.
Oh, how cool. Where is it located?
Pensacola.
Oh, but you're in Pensacola. Oh, I should come visit. I would love to come visit. Oh my gosh, you're in Pensacola.
That's an easy day trip. Yeah.
Totally easy day trip. All right, we have field trip.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally. I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's close by.
Yeah, so I'm the buyer. I was there as the buyer for the quilt shop because we sell fabric at a pretty steep discount to get people in the door to buy our stuff.
Oh, interesting.
There. So I was there buying fabric and different things for the quilt shop. But we were also, Martelli is an exhibitor, so I was there, handing out our products, promoting the Martelli brand, and then also, making.
And then I imagine you have to make samples for the booth and things like that, quilt samples and things like that. So you've got that part.
I made a couple of the samples that were hanging. Actually, this year we decided to run a contest. So the stuff that was hanging in our booth this year was made by customers using a new template set. So it was a contest, and actually the people who were at Houston voted on the winner of that contest. So
love it.
I got out of making the backdrop for that, but I'm currently working on the ones for QuiltCon, and that is an enormous undertaking, but it's a lot of fun.
Right, because it's all modern. I'll be at QuiltCon. I'm teaching at QuiltCon, so I'll be at QuiltCon.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
About intellectual property.
Very nice.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm doing 3, I think. Intellectual property, it's not what you think. A class on trademarks, because people both using, obtaining one and also using other people's trademarks. And then a class that I have to keep working on, which is quilting copyright. So the idea is to, what you're kind of saying about samples, to be able to have a bunch of understanding of copyright by making a number of things over 3 hours to understand the concepts of copyright through the process of quilting. So
it's such a tricky area with quilting because so much of it is you building off of other people. Regardless, there's absolutely nothing completely new in quilting.
It's a sharing culture. It's totally true.
Exactly.
It's really interesting.
And there are people who don't care at all and are like, here's my pattern, take it for free, make it, do whatever you want with it. And then the others that are like, no, you must buy a copy of the pattern for every quilt that you make of the pattern.
Right.
So
then there's so I've been interviewing a lot of art quilts, quilt artists who are art quilters. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Quilt artists? I don't know. Anyway, art quilters. And a lot of them are not, they don't have any interest in pattern making or any of the, they're artists. They're they're selling their unique art, and it has nothing to do with the consumerism of replicating the work.
Well, and that's the biggest thing with the art quilts is most of them are not designed to be replicated. And
no, they're not. That protects them in their own way.
If I looked at them, I couldn't replicate them if I wanted to. And
that's great, right?
Who are drawn to that sort of quilting aren't interested in replicating anyway. Mm-hmm. So having a pattern for an art quilt is not really beneficial to anyone because no one's going to use it. That's more about techniques, and again, that's how a lot of people make their living is through education. It's almost like within the recording industry how they stopped being able to sell music. Yeah. So now they make their money doing live events.
Hugely. And that's what I think that you're speaking to the choir because is that what you say? Preaching to the choir. Preaching to the choir? I don't know. I'm not very good at my whole language word thing. Cuz I keep saying this over and over again. The music industry already figured it out. You're not going to make the money off the songs because the songs can be ripped off easily. Exactly. So I see with the quilt,
stop fighting it.
Right. So now it's the concerts and the merchandise, and even when my kid, who's now way into concerts, you can get a code, right? You get the code to get the tickets early, but the way to get the code is you have to buy merchandise,
Yep.
So clever, right?
Yeah.
And we do it every time. Like, we got all the ridiculous, like, we need the code so we can get the good tickets. And the tickets are a part of it. But the music itself, they're making some money off of it, but that's not where the money is, you know?
It's very few artists actually make any living off of.
So how do we translate that to the quilting world? Like, how do we understand that model? That anything that is going to be replicatable super easy, like patterns, is not going to be sustainable.
Exactly. I know one thing, Paper Pieces has done a great job.
Paper Pieces is amazing, right?
Yeah.
I love them. They take really average shapes and sell a lot of them.
Exactly, but they save you a lot of work. So,
That's right.
you know, you don't have to sit there and cut 45,000 hexagons.
That's right. So I say consumables, right? So they're convenience.
Yeah.
And you need a bunch of them.
And same thing goes for like foundation piece patterns.
Yeah.
It's pretty much when there's something attached to the pattern, you know,
That's right.
That's one of the things I've done at Martelli is creating kits that you need a template.
That's right.
to.
And that's where I've really come. Like, I see who is making the money, who's successful. I mean, you've got cool. You know, rock star people, right? Mm-hmm. Like Tula Pink. That's one thing. You always have those things, but like consumables, things you have to buy over and over again. Quilt Smart is a really good example too, right? With the interface, the Mondo bag, and like all of that stuff that you have to buy the interface to use it. Also, as you said, foundation piecing, like all these different things where you need this thing, the consumable thing,
exactly. Where
over
it's
and over
not just
again.
The fabric that you're buying, you need some other aspect of it. Those seem to be the people who, at least for now, have a business model that might be sustainable. But
that's sustainable. That's right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
But, you know, we might have once thought that about fabric, and fabric companies are folding, pun intended, all over the place.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it?
So that the same thing could happen with the consumables if there's...
That's right. It's right now, that's what it is. But then...
right now that seems to be...
That's right.
But if we get to where there's a glut of them and everyone has all of them...
and we see that with rulers, don't you think? We're doing this whole project on rulers, and like the ruler situation's out of control because they got cheap, and it's easy to print them. There's too many rulers, I think.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things Tula Pink actually just came out with is, you know, her new set of rulers that goes with Pinkerton. So when she comes out with her next line, she'll have a whole other set of rulers that go with this particular. That's
right. Very clever.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
I'm not saying that like every ruler is like, I think that the rulers, we have a couple of rulers that we just are like, you know, I love rulers. When they work, they make your life so much better.
Exactly.
But I really am looking at like more, maybe not even rulers. I mean, there's a lot of rulers, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Templates. Like every single book, like people want to set, like there's a pattern book and now you have a template to buy as well. And I can get the model of that, right?
Yeah.
But that's a lot of plastic in your life. You know what I'm saying?
It is, yeah. And that's one of the things that I actually try to do with Martelli is, well, what if we take these templates that we've already sold to all of our customers and show them a couple of quilts that they can make using those?
Right.
And she actually loves that idea, so that's one of the things that I'm working on.
That you do templates.
Yeah, exactly. We do a lot of templates. I mean, there's a lot of different things. There's templates and cutters and a lot of different notions that they make. But yeah, one of the things I'm trying to push is uses for the tools that we've already sold to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really great, actually, you know, because the other thing I find is that you get it home and you can't remember what the hell you're supposed to do with this tool. You know, like that's the other problem. It's like, okay, that's a very nice looking weird shape I have now, but I do not know what I'm supposed to do with this weird looking shape.
Yeah,
which is also a problem. You know?
In January, she was talking about her quilting resolutions, and she had this whole stack of rulers that she's bought over the last few years in Houston.
Yeah.
And her resolution was simply to take the plastic off of at least one of them. Because she hadn't even done that, even though...
Take the plastic off. That's right.
Take the plastic off. Not even using it, just taking the
unwrap
plastic
it.
off of one of them.
I get it. I totally get it.
Exactly. And that's one of the things in this particular industry is it's focused on, or at least for now, it's people with a lot of discretionary income. It's an expensive hobby, so people tend to not get into it.
It's an expensive hobby.
Unless they can afford it, and the ones who can afford it, you know, Well, but it's the people who can afford the $20,000 hobby, so they spend, $20,000 on this machine.
The tools, the toys are expensive.
The toys and the tools are expensive.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm curious to see in the coming, maybe not necessarily the coming years, but in the coming decades, as millennials who don't necessarily have as much discretionary income as their parents have.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens, and that's part of the reason I think with fabric companies, millennials don't stash.
Yeah, millennials don't stash.
They buy what they need, and then they make the project, and then if they had to have bought a little extra and they have a few scraps,
then they add it in stash.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'm more I'm not a millennial. I'm not a millennial. I'm so not a millennial. But I think I am more like a millennial, and I also feel like I want to get stuff out. Like if I find that I'm not using it.
Yeah. We were raised on hoarders and stuff like that, so it's sort of an opposite. There's a lot of minimalists and things like that. So
stuff. Yeah.
It's a very different. Just the sort of overall lifestyle choices that are different in people under 40
isn't it?
Versus over.
Yeah.
Are not terribly compatible with healthy quilting industry.
Interesting.
So I'm curious to see how that's going to.
It's so funny because I was a grad student for a very long time, like a long time.
Yeah, it happens.
And I think that mentality of like grad students don't have. I mean, most grad students don't have a lot of money, so I think that there was always a sense of like cautious buying because you only had so. I mean, you knew you only had so much money, and it wasn't. So I don't know. That doesn't really go away.
Well, and the space that a lot of millennials live in, whether by choice or by necessity, is usually a lot smaller. So most people under 40 don't have a sewing room. I'm fortunate enough that I do. But
you have a sewing space.
It's not the norm at all.
That's funny. I never thought about that. It's funny. When we lived in New Orleans. Now it's a therapy session. You're just like my therapist now. But when we lived here in New Orleans, the first house we lived in that rented was a 2.5 bed half. There's like a little sun porch that had been a 2.5 bedroom house, and there were 4 of us and 4 cats. There was like and one was a child who had like way too many toys. So the house, I mean, it was a teeny tiny smushy house, and I did no quilting. There was no quilting happening. But then we got this ridiculous converted duplex that was like way like it was good. Like we can't talk about that part, but anyway, but it was a good deal, and it was weird. And there was like rooms that we were like, what are we going to do with this room, right? And we were going from teeny tiny house to like, well, this is weird, but it was cheap, and it was like, okay, it's perfect for our family. So now we have a sewing space, like a big sewing space, but we have 2 living rooms, and we didn't know what to do with the other living room. So like. What you're saying is very interesting. I wonder about the sewing community because they always like, why aren't millennials quilting? It's like, well, they don't have a place. The same like we didn't quilt in this small house is what I'm saying.
Yeah. People my age who have asked me to teach them to quilt don't have a sewing machine and are not going to buy one. They want to do handwork.
Yeah.
Strangely. And so
really
I just tell them that's going to take a really long time. And they're like, I'm not in a hurry. So I've taught several friends.
I love that.
Just the basics of hand piecing and English paper piecing, of course.
That's really cool, right?
But that seems to be like the idea is I don't want a sewing machine. I don't want to spend that $100. Also, I have nowhere to put it.
Right.
So I can, I can throw all of this in a tote bag and shove it in a drawer or something. But or even leave it in my car because
so interesting. Well, now I'm getting way into me, but one more part of this. So there's all this toys, all this equipment. We've got a lot of it. It's been a great, amazing experience. Lots of things coming in, university buying lots of stuff. So that's all, lots and lots of toys. It's all good. Yeah. I'm very toy blessed at the moment. Yeah. But I got a new toy, which are the craft optics glasses, the ones that you can see. And I cross-stitched for a long time, so I wore them, but I'm like, I need a cross-stitch project to try it. So I went on Amazon, and for like $18, I got this project so I could try the glasses, and it was so refreshing and weird. It was like, it was contained. It's going to take me forever to do. It only cost $18, right? It was just like, I'm like, why am I quilting? Like, this is like, I don't know. I could do it in bed, I don't know. Yeah. There was a moment of like, I've made a terrible mistake.
Another part of why I've been able to get to the point that I am is because I have this job at Martelli, and I essentially have a quilt store.
Right. You have exactly.
I have all of the tools.
You get all the toys.
Exactly. I just grab what I need, or even if it is something that's going to be for a personal project, I get a steep discount. So
yeah,
I have access to a lot more than I would have.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too. It's interesting because I ordered, it's a ridiculous story, but we may not be able to bear it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So I was like, I'm going to order something for Christmas for myself. I'm going to purchase it, and it's not going to be, the university's not going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it, right? So it's like this whole thing. I'm like very proud of myself. So I decided to get one of those circle Martelli board things because like people are always about the circle thing,
yes,
right? And my cutting is not the greatest; it's kind of crap. So I'm like, so I buy it, and I'm like, I spent like it's like $34, and then it comes, and it's like, and I need the base. So it was like crap. Like, okay, so then I bought the base, and I was like, this is so expensive. Like, it's not expensive, but I haven't had to buy anything. So I was like, dude, like, who's like, this is like, anyway, it was this really ridiculous moment of like, maybe I should be buying my own toys because I appreciate more all the toys that keep showing up because I was very like, it was a big moment for me.
Actually, yesterday I went downstairs to buy my sister's Christmas present because she's a cross stitcher, actually.
Oh, cool.
And she doesn't quilt, but she cross stitches. And I was looking, and I was like, "Wait, these are $9? What? No, I don't. I have to rethink this."
I know, right? I'm like, this is ridiculous. We're in the raw, and it takes forever to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I forget how much all of it costs.
Yeah, it gets really out of perspective. Now, I have to say, for me, I love the feel of the fabric. I love making the stuff. I love the sound of the machine. So it isn't just, but it is a bit weird. The whole thing is a bit weird.
Yeah. Well, I have access to, because Martelli makes long arms and the mid-arm sit-down quilting machines as well. So I have, there's a Janome dealership in the quilt shop. So I have all of these machines and all of the, I have access to so many great tools and stuff. I'm very spoiled.
So I get it. I totally get it. And I don't work on that. I don't have as many tools. You have better tools probably, but I have enough that I'm like way overly blessed in the ridiculous way. So that was my story of like sticker shock, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
And okay, so before we go, and maybe this is a question for Martelli, not for you, but you had mentioned something about hobby long arms, and so one of the things that we're looking at is I really want to understand sort of that's the next step is all these machines and all that. We haven't talked to machine people yet, but we'll get there. But what are your thoughts about sort of the hobby market? Like you've got like I don't know where Martelli comes in. But there is this kind of notion of all of these long arm people moving into machines that are made for people like me, right? Smaller space machines and less expensive machines and all of that. It's interesting that that's like a thing at the moment, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a
smart move.
It definitely is because the technology itself has come down and people are finding ways to make them with cheaper materials and things like that. It's just, it's the way any technology develops. After a certain amount of time, it eventually becomes cheaper. And so part of it is that it is becoming more accessible, but also just, I don't know, in general, it seems like people are still spending a lot. Even the ones that are considered a hobby machine,
they're still expensive. That's right.
Yeah, they're about $18,000 more than I would ever pay.
Yeah.
But also, I'm 32, so just the idea of spending that much money on a hobby is foreign to me, just because I've never had that stable of
an income.
I went through grad school and then I was teaching as an adjunct.
Yeah, you were adjunct. Yeah, you get it. I get it. Totally. Yeah, I know. Exactly. I know your life. I totally know your life.
So the idea of having anything that costs $20,000,
right? Totally.
That's more than a car.
When I was, so we got married. I have an uncle that's fairly wealthy, but like the other side of the family, our family isn't that wealthy. But they bought us these really fancy pots to cook in, and we were like, those pots cost more than our car. It was like that said a lot about our car at the time. It was like very fancy pots, nothing else fancy.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like some of them are a little more reasonably priced. I don't want to get into specific brands or anything. I might say something else.
Well, I think they're all like, what you're seeing is a trend. It looks like all of them, they're still expensive, but it looks like, just from the outside, that they're playing with the market to see what's the price point where a hobbyist who's not going to make a profession out of it will buy in. That seems to be what seems to be happening.
A lot of quilters will have, I think the average is, I forget the numbers, but a lot of quilters don't think twice about paying between $4,000 and $6,000 for a sewing machine.
Yeah.
Because that's a good machine. That's not the top of the line anywhere, but that's a good, strong machine that's going to do everything you need it to, and then some. And so it seems like they're trying to get long arms into that same. Yeah. Because there are several companies that have them starting around $5,000.
That's right.
For a really basic one on a small frame.
That's right. Small frame's a thing right now. I'm not sure about that, but it's
Well, and then the mid-arm, the fixed mid-arm sit-down, everyone calls them.
Yeah, those are good.
But the ones. Actually, I've found I prefer that. I think it's because I haven't been long arming for as long as I've been doing free motion.
There's something really lovely about sitting and having a big space to work and making it move,
Well, and I actually, ironically, found that I prefer to do it standing at the sit-down.
Really? You do?
Yes, exactly. Well, Martelli, all of their tables and machines are on electronic lifts.
So my gosh, that's so funny.
Whatever height
I've been starting, I should talk to you guys, because I've been starting to stand when I quilt, because, I don't know, there's stuff going on. Mostly because we have a really ridiculous kitten that I have to keep batting away. So standing gives me a little more batting room. It's weird.
I would like to stand and sew, but I have not found a machine that has a long enough foot pedal cord.
It's hard,
for the table to be high enough for me to stand in. So,
because you're taller. I'm short. See, I'm about a foot shorter.
Yeah.
So it's fine with me.
The Martelli sit-down machine does raise up high enough that I can stand and quilt at it.
That's really cool.
But a lot of people are getting those, because some of those are in the $3,000 range, actually, because it's such a specialized machine. The machine itself isn't actually as expensive because there are no feed dogs or anything, so it's actually a cheaper machine to make.
Yeah.
So those in particular are getting a lot more popular.
They're really cool. I mean,
it's just I don't know that it's a good or a bad thing or where it's going to go. It's just kind of for now, it's just a thing.
It's a thing. Now, we are so over time. And we haven't talked about the thing that we need to talk about, which is intellectual property. How much of intellectual property, how much does that play in sort of what you do and what you're concerned about? Particularly, personally, I suspect that it's not a huge concern. But professionally, I would imagine there's some kind of, if you're using somebody's pattern or is there more... what's your thought about intellectual property, both using somebody else's stuff and also people using your stuff?
It's such a murky area.
And it's not like a 1 minute answer.
Term that everyone uses. One of the things that I've been pushing a lot lately is showing people, that the Martelli templates will work with existing patterns.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a strange area. So, I'll, if I want to make a video for YouTube, I do a lot of tutorials from the Martelli channel, and so, I have to walk that fine line of showing them how our ruler or template will help them make this pattern without actually
It's weird, right? Yeah, so that's a problem, because we ran into that in our sew-along. And then the other thing is, you feel like you're endorsing the pattern when, do you have to go get permission or not permission, or, I think that gets really interesting, too,
For them, so far, I've only worked with patterns that were designed by people I know or have met.
That's nice. That's good.
So I pretty much said, hey, can I do a video showing how, and it'll be something as simple as this ruler will cut 4.5-inch strips really quickly.
Yeah.
And this quilt is made mostly using 4.5-inch strips.
I like that.
For some reason, 4.5-inch strips or something coming across a lot lately.
Yeah.
So I'm showing this particular ruler that we have that cuts in 1/2-inch increments, and so you just cut those. It's great, and it's
interesting.
But so far, all of the ones that I've been working with are people that I know, or it's something where I clearly am so far from showing the pattern, or the pattern is available online easily.
Right,
so
that's not a problem. To
it and say, hey, here it is. Here's the free pattern. Here's what I did.
Yeah, interesting.
So I'm very conscious about that.
Interesting.
And I'm kind of the whole department when it comes to that aspect of Martelli. So I'm really the only one that needs to be concerned
that matters, right? It doesn't,
The few patterns that I've done for them, the deal that she made when she hired me was any tools or anything that I develop are hers. The designs and the patterns are mine.
Oh, that's reasonable.
So when I post a design or I post a pattern that I've created working with our templates, it's by Ben Marshall, aka the Cheeky Quilter.
That's great. I like that.
So she's been really gracious with that. So far, I haven't charged for anything. I haven't come up with anything complicated enough that I feel comfortable charging for it, honestly. Yeah. Like, it's mostly just simple. Like this one is, there's one that I did that's nothing but half square triangles.
Interesting. And then they're putting that up on the website so that you have samples and patterns.
So there's usually a video tutorial that I'll do that goes up on the YouTube site or on Facebook, one or the other, sometimes both. And then a couple of patterns. There's only one or two up right now, but they're
right. Oh, we so have to talk again. You're so funny. All right, so so we should talk more about videos at some point. Will you come back and chat with that sometime? I would love to know about like what you learned from the YouTube videos and what you like and don't like, and how you sort of deal with your YouTube videos, because you've got this expertise that most people don't.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen both sides of it now.
Right. How interesting. Very interesting. I love it. This is so great. All right, so we have to have a field trip. I totally want to come there. That would be just so insanely awesome. We got to figure out a time and come back and talk more about your process of the video thing. And I would love to talk to people at Martelli. I think I've talked to, I think there's been some communication, but we just haven't gotten that far.
Probably, but
it'd be great.
I don't even know who that would be, but I can make it happen.
I don't know either. It's all good. It's all good. You can tell them it's not scary. So
you should come see us, and you can we have a studio upstairs. You can interview us.
That would be great. Exactly. Why don't we just do that? Right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's do that. Let's figure that time for me just to come drive there and do it. I would love it. So I keep telling my students, because we are writing the book, the copyright book, and we got the first 2 chapters done on the way home from Houston in the car, and we have 3 more chapters. So maybe we'll just like drive there, have your thing, and then drive home, so the book will be done.
There you go.
We need some driving time.
Yeah, and it's a straight shot down 10. We're right off Interstate 10. So yeah.
All right, I'm serious about this. We got to figure out when to come see you, because I think it'd be great. After the holidays, we'll just come in, interview people, experience it, do some Facebook Live. It'd be great.
Definitely.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to have you review this one, because we talked about a lot of stuff, and I know you did want to talk about work, and then we did talk about work. So I think, because that's the way of life, because, it's like, don't eat the cookie. Okay, well, I ate the cookie.
I don't think I said anything, but
no, I thought you were great. I don't think there's anything problem at all, but I just want you to feel comfortable. So I'll send it to you for a review if you'd like, and I will review it too. So, because it was like the last interview, so I was a little more like, so anyway, I had such a fun time with you. Thank you so much for coming. This is great.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Garr. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.